I don't even know if I remember how to do this, so this is going to be a very interesting experiment for me. I'm back again. It's been like a year since I've uploaded a video, but that doesn't mean it's been a year since I've been reading, because I have been reading all year. And so I decided for the first video back, I was going to tell you guys about the five-star reads that I had in 2022. I didn't read as much as I had hoped I would be reading this year. I usually aim for 52 books because that's like a book a week. That feels doable, but I think I reached around like late 30s. I haven't like finished reading some books that I'm still in the middle of, so I think I'm gonna hit about like 38, 39 this year, and like at least 8 of those books I read in December because I've got my reading mojo back, and I think that's because I've had a week off and nothing to do. So let's start with the first book, which I read as part of a video that was scrapped, that was gonna go up this year before I started traveling and life got chaotic. I had such grand ambitions for my channel this year that just did not come to be, which is usually the case for me. So like I said, the video idea was scrapped, but basically I had planned for the month of March to only read books that would make me cry, and I did. I just literally deleted the footage I took yesterday because I knew I wasn't going to be editing it at any point, but I still get to talk about 2 of those books with you that I read for that. The first one is Pachinko. This one was on the list because I saw the trailer for the TV adaptation from Apple, and it had Lee Min-ho in it, and I've been obsessed with him since Boys Over Flowers, so I knew I was going to watch it. Spoiler alert, I also didn't watch that. What have I been doing this year? Not reading or watching things that I thought I was gonna. Basically, this is a historical fiction book which follows a Korean family who immigrates to Japan. And it did, in fact, make me cry, though not as much as I thought it was gonna, honestly. It took a bit longer into the story before I actually was like getting teary-eyed. I'm not a huge historical fiction reader. I recently reminded myself of that from a book that I read this month, which I will not be talking about. But there are exceptions to that rule, and Pachinko is definitely one of them. It is stunningly written. It's beautiful. But I think also the key element, which I've noticed from the other historical fiction that the one other historical fiction book that I can recall that I've enjoyed reading, is that it's multi-generational. So it's very character driven because we are following generations of a family and the impacts of colonization on that family specifically. And the other book I'm thinking of that I enjoyed that also has these 2 traits is Homegoing by Darcy. So I think I like multi-generational historical fiction, and that's it, because also we're seeing different time periods as well. So I think being stagnant in one time period with one set of characters isn't for me in historical fiction. But if you like historical fiction unlike me, or you liked Homegoing, this is a hit. It's not gonna miss, you're gonna enjoy it. The second book for that video that never came to be that I read and definitely made me cry a ton was Crying in H Mart, which is in the name. I knew this is why I selected this book. One of my friends warned me before I read it. This was like peak pandemic time, so I hadn't been home in a minute, and they were like, do not read this book until you've had the chance to see your mom. And so I did that. I waited until I went home this past Christmas and decided to read it for the video finally. I love reading nonfiction from people who primarily do things in other genres. So I'm thinking like of poets, I'm thinking of like comedians, and in this case a singer. I love reading nonfiction from them because you can really see the impact of their other art on that work. And she narrates the audiobook, which was amazing. It really added to the experience for me, I think. I love, again, reading nonfiction when it's read by the author. This memoir deals a lot with parental loss. It deals with the tension between immigrant parents and children, and I really loved how it explored that tension. The whole idea that parents move to a different country to provide a better life for their family, and they have a really specific idea of what this life is going to be, and then the tension that comes up when maybe the children aren't exactly following that path, and it's coming from a place of fear and like a place of love. I really enjoy the use of food as a representation of your connection to your culture, and how parents use it as a way to keep their children more connected to their cultures when they are living in different countries, and how it is basically a love language between parents and their children. It was definitely something I heavily related to myself, because I do find myself calling my mom for recipes that she used to make for me when I was a kid when I'm feeling particularly nostalgic or like missing home a little bit. So I pass on the warning to you that if you are very close with your mom and you haven't seen them in a minute, maybe wait or call them before you read this, because you're gonna cry. You're gonna cry regardless. You're gonna be hungry and you're gonna cry. But I really recommend this. Even if you're not really into nonfiction, it's very accessible. And now we get onto the books that I actually have copies of with me. The first one I read as part of House Salt, which is a book club that I do online with my friends that I've had for years and years and years. We've been doing this for a minute. And this year we had it's pretty rough reading here. But one of the books we read together has made the list, surprisingly, and that is Book Lovers by Emily Henry. I love me a good rom-com, especially it's something that's changed since the pandemic first started. I got really into romance books because they were a good sense of escape from what we were going through. I can't say it took me by surprise because I've liked her other two books, but it definitely is my favorite of her books. I described it last night on our live show. That was like a wrap up of the year. That is a Hallmark movie that knows it's a Hallmark movie, which is definitely what gives this book an edge for me over her other two books. The first book is very much, it isn't stereotypically what you would consider a romance book, which I personally enjoy. I think I really like a lot of romance in a story, but it doesn't have to be the only thing in the story for me to enjoy it. There's like familial issues in that one that add like a depth to the book, which I enjoy. And then People We Meet on Vacation is straight up friends to lovers, which I'm a friends to lovers sucker. This one is a mix of those two where there's a depth to it because she's dealing with career issues, she's dealing with family issues, but the romance is the key point of the book. And I love her as a protagonist. She's drinking her little martinis in the meetings. I was like, this character is one that's gonna be very relatable, and that just like makes the book 10 times more fun to read. It's kind of grumpy and sunshine, kind of grumpy and grumpy, which I really enjoy. I feel like everyone's read it by this point. And I'm really excited for Happy Place, which is gonna come out later this year. I feel like she's like an auto-read author for me. I haven't really read a book that I've disliked yet, so I'll just keep reading them until that happens, I guess. The fourth book on this list kind of blends the historical fiction and the romance element, which if I had to choose a subgenre of romance reading that I enjoy, I was talking with a friend about it recently, and historical fiction, there's a pining element to it that makes it so fun to read, and that's definitely the nugget of like why I like reading them. Is the pining, is the they can't be together for a very specific reason because of the cultures. And so the book that was an immediate 5-star that I read this month is A Lady's Guide to Fortune Hunting. It was kind of described as like, if you like Jane Austen, you would like this book. We know me, I'm a sucker, I'm gonna read that book. So I definitely think the Jane Austen is correct, which is rare for these books. Normally they're like, if you like the plot of a Jane Austen book, you would like this, but no, if you like the writing of Jane Austen and her comedic timing and just the way she satirizes her current society, if you like that, you will like this book because I feel like it really does capture that like tone. It's very funny. I actually laughed out loud multiple times when I was reading it. It takes you on a journey, honestly. You know how there's those tropes in historical romance where it's like, oh, she likes this guy who's really rich but she's poor, or she's trying to like ensnare someone in the marriage market. Like it has all of these tropes in them. It doesn't have just one, it dabbles in multiple, and that's what makes it so fun. So if you're like me and you really like historical fiction, this one is like the perfect encapsulation of the entire genre. So it's got the humor of like Jane Austen, it has the humor of like that Emma adaptation that just came out, but with like the romantic plots of a Bridgerton season. So if either of those things are something you enjoy, I highly recommend this one. I literally put the author's second book on my immediate like, I need to read this when it comes out in 2023. So now the fifth and final book that I read this month, that I gave 5 stars in my brain, but nowhere else because I don't use Goodreads anymore, is Songs in Ursa Major. So this one, it's been on my list. It's been on my list since it first came out. I think it came out about a year-ish after Daisy Jones and the Six. And if you're new here, I really fucking mess with Daisy Jones and the Six. I'm so excited for the adaptation to come out. March cannot come soon enough. So Songs in Ursa Major is often compared to Daisy Jones and the Six because it is also set in the same time period, also follows singers, but obviously Daisy Jones and the Six is very different in that it's written in interview style, which I personally enjoyed. I didn't have a problem with it. I know that's often a sticking point for some people. When they don't enjoy the book, they don't like the style it's written in. Maybe you would like Songs in Ursa Major more because it is written traditional narrative. It's third person, and sometimes there's an omniscient element to it which pops in and out, but it wasn't distracting in any way. When Daisy Jones comes out, I am going to be pointing toward this book for people because I feel like if you really enjoy that and you want to continue having like that feeling that show / book gives you, Songs in Ursa Major is it. If you like Almost Famous, Songs in Ursa Major. If you like Taylor Swift and the way she sticks it to the man as a woman in the music industry, Songs in Ursa Major is a book I would recommend. So that's it. Those are the 5 books that I read and gave 5 stars this year, and I will see you hopefully in another video soon, but I never make promises anymore because I know myself, and at some point something will happen and I will stop filming inevitably for a bit.